I mean, look, all things being equal, right? If you look at what makes people successful, I mean, there's four areas of life that I consider you got to work at, right? I mean, you got to work at business and making money. You got to work at your health. You got to work at all your relationships.
Welcome, everyone, to Fix Your BS, the podcast where we dive deep into belief systems that shape our lives and hold us back from achieving our dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Persley, also known as Dr. G, and in each episode, we'll explore powerful conversations with successful individuals in business, money, relationships, health, and personal growth. Join us as we unpack their journeys, challenge limiting beliefs, and discover practical insights to help you build your dream life on your own terms. It's time to fix your BS and unlock your full potential. Today, I've got Ryan Pineda. He's been in the real estate industry since 2010 and has invested in over $100 million worth of real estate, and it's continuously growing. As an entrepreneur, he has founded 7 different businesses that have generated 7 to 8 figures of revenue. He's amassed over 2 million followers on social media and has generated over 1 billion views online. I met Ryan a couple of years ago, got into some of his programs, was really impressed. I mean, the guy is a giver. He loves helping other people out. And he has been fortunate enough or kind enough to hop on the podcast with me. So Ryan, I really appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, excited to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So obviously you're into real estate, and most people kind of know who you are because of the online presence that you have. Although, as we just talked about, we're always trying to get more attention, reach more people. One of the things that really strikes me is the heart that you have, the giving mentality, the really taking time to, look at someone and be present. Have you always been like that, or is that a skill that you developed over time?
I think for me, yeah, whatever I'm doing, I just want to focus on that. So a lot of people are, I don't know, scatterbrain. They're thinking about every problem they've got and this thing and that thing, and they can never even just stay in the moment. I know, like, honestly, there's a lot of successful people like that too, if we're being honest. So somehow they make it work. But my thing is, if I'm here, I might as well just be here. I'm not worried about what I got after this. Like, I'll worry about it when it's there, when I'm doing that.
You were when I was there a couple of years, about a year and a half ago. You were kind enough to give me a tour of the facility that you had and all the people that were running around. And one of the things I noticed was I've been to a lot of different seminars, a lot of different offices, and a lot of different, very wealthy and successful people's organizations. Yours seemed more well-oiled, more organized, more in control than a lot of the other organizations. Any reason why? Is there something you do different than other people, other business owners, or is it just something that is innate to you that you're like, look, you got a job, do it. I'm going to stay out of your hair and let's hit these goals. Let's move forward. Like what is it you think?
I think it all starts from the beginning, right? I mean, it starts with the culture that you have, how you go about hiring people, how you hold them accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do those things right, then you start to get the byproduct that you've seen where, oh man, it's like these people are dialed in, they know their roles, they're all, very similar. They've got, they're super nice. Like all those things start to happen, but it starts with first, having a vision for what kind of organization you want, hiring people that fit that vision, and holding them accountable to the things that they've agreed to do. So yeah, there's a whole process to it, man. It's definitely not by accident. And I think that most people who struggle with that, or maybe they're not very good at hiring, or they're wondering why it seems they have to do everything, it's because they're not doing those things correctly.
I think a lot of people have problems. In my time with consulting businesses, there's 2 problems that I find the most. Number one, the business owner won't delegate. They won't get out of their own way. They want to be in everything. So they're not really have a trust problem. And then the other one is that what you just said, the defining of the vision. Where is this company headed? Like, what's the purpose? Who are we trying to serve? Do you find that, in your coaching businesses and the things that you're doing for other people, do you find those things, or are there other things that you notice as well?
Yeah, I've just found that most people want to do things themselves. And I think it comes from probably two things. Most people used to work a job before they got into business, right? And so with a job, you're used to doing everything, that you're told to do. And so you kind of take that into business where it's like, all right, well, I'm the guy who does it. I do the work. That's what I get paid for. And so, most people just don't really learn the other side of being a business owner where you pay other people to do the job. I talked about this in one of our workshops. It's like you have the employee mindset or the owner's mindset. The employee mindset is, hey, I'm going to trade my time in exchange for money.
Mhm.
So, if I work these amount of hours, I'm guaranteed to make this amount of pay. That's great. The owner mentality is, hey, I'm going to trade my money for someone else's time. And it's very different because at that point, right, you're only limited by the amount of money you have. You could go get tons of people's times. I mean, we have over 40 employees in my company right now. So, I'm basically take 40 times 40. That's 1,600 hours a week that I'm paying my money for to get time. I mean, if I only work 40 hours a week, what's going to be better? Me working 40 hours or me paying to get 1,600 hours a week of work? And you just got to learn to think like an owner, and really it's thinking like an investor. I'm like, yo, if I buy 1,600 hours of time, I'm going to make way more money than I'm paying for that time.
Yeah, I think most people just run into fear. They're afraid of what if it doesn't work. And one of the things when I was on your podcast last February that really caught my attention that I really liked that you said, you were like, I don't even focus on that. Like, why are we even thinking about that? Like, success is the only thing I focus on. Success, growth, sales. Let's go. Let's move. And I love the fact that it's like, why even give that my time and energy?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, they focus on all the wrong things. I had one of our Christian events. We call them Kingdom Nights. It's a free event we do where we, have a night of worship, and then we have a night of training, Christian entrepreneurs how to, build their business, but still keep their faith and family and everything else a priority. And one of the things that that somebody asked me during that was, they go, hey, we just finally did our first real estate deal. I'm trying to decide how we should split the money. And, I got two other partners. And, how do you think we should split it? It's been 2 years. And I'm like, you guys are thinking of the wrong thing. Like, if you're worried about splitting the money after 2 years of doing this, it's like you need to be thinking about, man, this thing that we just did not work for 2 years. And yeah, we finally got something to work, but like, let's think about how we can go put all that money back into a new thing that works better.
So that really goes back to thinking small, thinking very small, very limited. And you obviously live in that abundance mindset, man. Like, some of the things that you've mentioned are very faith based in the idea of, look, there's more than enough for everyone to win. Let's focus on that. And if you get honest people that are driven in their purpose and in faith, then we shouldn't have to get into the nitty gritty of stuff like you just talked about, of, well, how are we going to split this, $10,000 profit or $50,000 profit, when you're like, let's refocus back that energy to what went wrong, right? Eliminate what went wrong, so then we can take the 50,000, turn into 500,000, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yep. And I already know too, I'm going to have a ton of failures too. So that's like another part that people kind of get tripped up about. They're like, dude, it didn't work. I tried it once. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it's probably also not going to work again. But I'm telling you, if you fail enough times, it will work, and it'll work in a big way bigger than all the failures.
So let's talk about failures for a second, because that is something I believe is what drives people to settle a lot. Is they have a failure and they go, well, I don't want to put myself back out there. What if I fail again? And then they end up settling into some job or position or something they don't even like. What early failures did you have that you look back and say, ooh, that was a pivotal moment? Or do you just like, look, I failed, I learned, I moved on, and that's it?
Well, man, it's funny. I fail a lot more recently than I did early in my career. And it's ironic because, part of my background is I was a professional baseball player. And so I spent my whole life failing. In baseball, you fail 7 out of 10 times. you're really good. You bat 300. So for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I got out. I'm not going to get a hit every time. I mean, that's not realistic. Man, if I could get one hit a game, I'm doing really good.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, failing is something I've always done. And sports taught me that a lot. You always fail. Only one team wins the championship. Everyone else failed, you know? You lose the game so many times in a season. So for me, I was already accustomed to that, but I'll just say, early in my business career, I actually was pretty good. I got off to a hot start, and honestly, it kind of gave me the idea that I was invincible and that everything I touched turned to gold. I was like, I started flipping couches, that crushed. I started a brokerage, we got to 200 agents. Started a tax firm, got to multi-million dollars. Flipped hundreds of homes, and I didn't lose on a house flip for the first like 80 deals. I finally lost on a deal, like on deal 81. And then, I didn't really have a negative year in real estate until 2023. And when the interest rates doubled and all that stuff. So like, I was very fortunate on the real estate investing side. But then I would say these last 2 years have been filled with failure. Part of it is related to the market, right? Real estate had a really rough time these last 2 years. Lost millions of dollars on house flips that went south. And, thankfully I was able to pay back all my investors and everything else, but man, that was painful. Had to shut down a bunch of businesses over the years that I started that did not work out, or some that did work out for a period of time. And then, just no longer were, good things to do. Got into businesses that, I thought were trending up, and industries I thought were trending up, and then they stopped and the entire industry collapsed. And it's like, all right, well, got to deal with the fallout from this and lawsuits and everything else. And so, I've been on both sides of it. Extreme success and then extreme failure. And the failures I've had have been way bigger than almost, anyone. So what does that leave me with? It's like, all right, well, I still have a lot more success than failures, but man, the failures are pretty big.
Well, it leaves you with knowledge. It leaves you experience, that things that can never be taken away. I mean, which is what obviously you end up focusing on, because you're like, well, it sucks. I didn't like it, but at least I learned a lesson. Do you think it's more important to fail early when you've got all your chips on the table, or is it better to fail later on when you have ample chips where you're like, well, I can invest in this.
I think you fail all the time. I think the answer is just yes. So, for me, technically my baseball career was a failure. I mean, you look at it, I got to play 8 seasons professionally. I got to, be an All-American, get all my college paid for, all this stuff, right? And so, on one hand, it's a success compared to most. I did more than 99.9% of the world would do as an athlete. But I never got to my ultimate goal of playing in the big leagues. And I never made significant money from playing baseball. And so from that point of view, you could say it was a failure. You're like, dude, I mean, you spent 25 years doing this and it didn't result in what you had hoped for. But I don't look at it like that. Like I loved every minute of it. Right. And so to your point, when I look at all the failures in business, it's really the same thing. It's like, yep, I learned something from all of them. I learned what not to do mainly in the failures. And so hopefully I don't keep making the same stupid mistakes as I keep getting older. I would like to think, I'm 35 now, that the next 5 years are going to be so much infinitely better than the previous 5 just because of what I know.
Well, yeah, you keep that forever. And I think that's why there's this statement I heard not too long ago at a seminar I was at. And one of the speakers, he said, look, your 50s are really the earning years. And he's like, he said, if you have zero money when you're 40, but you've taken risk and you've failed, like you're talking about, multiple times, but you have the knowledge, he's like, you can rebuild from 40 to 50, and 50 to 60 are the earning years. You will be able to be unstoppable because you put yourself out there and took those risks. He goes, but if you have no money and you're 40 or 45 and you haven't taken any risk, He's like, it's going to be real hard because you have no knowledge, you have no experience that you can share with others, that you can put into other people in order to earn that money. That's not valuable, to anyone if you don't have that information and experience. So at least you'll have that forever. I mean, that's something that will never go away.
Yeah, and I was actually with Grant Cardone 2 days ago. We were in California, and I'm sitting in his villa. We're just hanging out, and we filmed a podcast too. And I'm just asking him, this is all off camera, and we're just talking about life. And he's in his late 60s now, I think, and his goals are shifting as he gets older. He's thinking about new ways to grow and get better. He's not stopping. He's not like thinking how he can ride off into the sunset. He's like, how do I 10x? It's the only way he lives his life. But it's interesting because I said, dude, I mean, what would you do if you started over again now, knowing what you know? And so he has like different opinions on how to make money, how to do this and that. But like, what's interesting is majority of his wealth has been made, starting in his 50s. Yeah, he did a lot between 30 to 50. Okay, but if you looked on a growth curve of his net worth and influence and all these things, 50 on has been, massive. And if you look at some, most of the biggest business guys you see on social media, most of them are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Because, I mean, it's hard to accomplish a lot at 35. Like you don't have a lot of time in the game. I mean, even for me, it's funny because so many people look to me for advice, and like I'm probably further ahead than most people, but I kind of even look at it and I'm like, yeah, I only retired from baseball like 7 years ago. I've really only been at this business thing full time for 7 years, and I've learned a ton. It feels like 70 years with the amount of businesses and things I've done, which is good because for me, I guess this would answer your question. It's like, I just want to try as many things as humanly possible now, learn what I need to learn, and then do the right thing for a long period of time. But if you never take a risk and you never try anything, you're just wasting time until you find the thing.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I totally agree with that. If you're afraid of finding who you really are and finding out what excites you, and you're never going to find it. I mean, you got to get out there and figure it out. I know a lot of people figure it out later on in life, but at least they were trying along the way. You'll never figure it out if you're not trying. That was something that you back when I was at the WealthCon, a great event, by the way. Really appreciated you doing that because great speakers, a lot of really like-minded individuals, but they, there was an overwhelming feeling of this connection. Was that originally like when you do your events and those type of things? Is that what you're trying to do? Is connect people? Are you trying to teach information? Are you trying to improve awareness? Like, what is the ultimate goal of those events?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different goals throughout the event, right? I mean, obviously, money is one of them. Long-term brand value is another one. Changing people's lives is, you want to accomplish a few different things when you're running events of that size. But what I would say is what I've realized over the years, and I was talking about this again. Like I said, I just had this event called Kingdom Nights. It's a free Christian event. And one thing I told them all was, one thing we need to do as business owners is do everything with excellence.
Mm.
There's a Bible verse, Colossians 3:23. It basically says, hey, work with excellence, not as if you're working for humans, but as if everything you do is for God. And that's kind of how I look at it with everything we do. It's like, yo, if somebody comes to WealthCon, I want this to be such an excellent experience that they're just like, wow, this was just amazing, from the speakers to the networking to the design to the location to the flow of the event to the people that were at the event. Man, it was just A plus. Like, I just want everything to be with excellence. And it's, for me anyways, if you do it with excellence, everything else will just fall into place. Like, all those things will happen. So all I got to do is focus on making an excellent event. And that same thing is true with any product or service you sell. It's like, let's just make it as good as humanly possible. And if we do that, it's going to glorify God. It's going to lead to our business doing well. It's going to attract awesome people. All those things are going to happen.
I think it's the idea of let's create it the best that we possibly can, create excellence, and serve others. And in that service, what ends up happening is you end up receiving, but you're not serving with the intent of receiving. You're really just serving in the intent of how can I make this so amazing for everybody else that it serves their needs. And therefore, they're going to end up coming back around. And even if they don't, they'll pass it on to somebody else. And, they'll probably come back around as well. But that's not obviously the original goal. It's impressive what you've pulled off, like you said, at 35, which is amazing. That people that are considered celebrities, they come by. You are obviously in Vegas, and they come by and they want to hang out and do stuff with you, like you said, hanging out with Grant. When you have billionaires coming by to do a podcast at random or come hang out and talk about different things, does that surprise you, or is that something like, yeah, I mean, I kind of expect it?
I mean, now I expect it. I'm not gonna lie to you. Our word, my word for this year, and I told this to our entire staff, is my word that I really focus on this year is expectation.
Mm.
We expect good things to happen. We expect to do things with excellence. I expect to see miracles. I expect to succeed. I expect that people are going to do what they say they're going to do. Like, most people don't live like that. Most people live with doubt and fear of like, oh, where's this going to screw up? This is too good to be working. Like, some's going to fail here. It's like, no, dude, I expect all these things to happen. So, yeah, like it's funny you use that word, because that is how I feel about it. But I think the second half of that question is really, well, how? Like, why is it happening? How the heck? I mean, okay, I get that you expect it to happen, but why is it happening? It's not just like this law of attraction thing, which I don't believe in. It's more so, I think that people, especially successful people, they can recognize other successful people. I can recognize if somebody is successful, even if they have no following or anything, just by how they carry themselves, the way they talk, like you had mentioned earlier, the way their staff treats you. It's like, clearly this person has it dialed in. And so I get to see that all the time. And so I think with a lot of these people, for example, right, back to just doing everything with excellence. When somebody comes on my podcast, I've made it clear to my team, and this is what we do. It's like, you got to give them a first class experience. I want it to be the best podcast experience they've ever had. So all the way from the moment they arrive into town, hey, do you need a ride from the airport? We'll pick you up. Okay, great. You're here. Awesome. Hey, let me give you a tour of the office. This is how we do things, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's Ryan. I'm going to set up 3 hours of a block with this person. I'm not going to just be like, yo, okay, cool. We got an hour and a half. Like, we'll be in and out. And then, I'll see you later. I'm like, I block off my schedule 3 hours of every podcast so I can hang out before, do the thing, hang out after, get to know them, and really, just just connect. Right. And then after it's done,
be present, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. And we give them a swag gift and all this stuff. Right. And it's like, they're like, dude, that was like, this is not your normal podcast that people ask you to be on and everything else. I'm like, yeah, that's how we do things around here. And then you know what happens? They're like, dude, how can I help you out? What can we do more together? And then that's like, hey, well, we got this event called WealthCon. Like, if you thought this was good, we got this other event, man. If you want to speak, we got tons of great people coming. There's just so many things that happen from it.
Well, I think just having that as in your mindset of excellence. I believe in the word of the year as well. I don't know why, but every year just one comes up, and ours this year was professionalism. I wanted everyone in our organization to understand that we are a professional organization that is going to win the Super Bowl or going to, win the championship or whatever you want to call it. You don't have a professional organization that kind of halfway does stuff. It's that exceptional mindset. So we expect each individual to have that professionalism as if they are playing for a championship caliber team. And then that passes out down through the ranks of the company. And therefore it creates a standard. And I think a lot of people in business are scared to create a standard because they're afraid they're going to lose people, or they're afraid they won't be able to hold the standard. And what's interesting is what you just said a minute ago when you talked about doubt and fear. What people don't realize is that when you have doubt and fear, you're actually expecting to lose as opposed to expecting to win. And when you also talk about the law of attraction, which I would love to have a conversation further about that in a second, but the expectation of looking for things that are going to help you win as opposed to things that are going to help you lose is going to dictate an outcome. It's going to
Yeah.
dictate the end result.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. So tell me about your belief in the law of attraction. I'd like to hear about this because so many people have fallen, I want to say victim, or I don't want to say victim. What do I want to say? They've watched the movie The Secret, and which is very me centered. It's very, I want a bike, so I'm going to think about getting a bike, and therefore a bike shows up. Have you ever watched that, The Secret?
I've read it. Yeah.
You read it? Yeah.
Back a long time ago when I was like 20.
Yeah. So tell me about the law of attraction. What is it that you don't believe in it, or what do you think about that? What is your, I don't know, thought process?
So this is where we're going to get really off the deep end.
Good. So, I like the deep end, man.
Yeah,
people like to listen to anyways, the deep end.
I talk a lot about faith, and obviously when you're a Christian, well, most don't think this way, but it's absolutely true, right? I mean, obviously there's the supernatural side of things. There's the spiritual side of things, right? I mean, the Bible tells us there's good and evil. The Bible tells us there's angels, there's demons. At the end of the day, I have seen so many supernatural things in my life. Like I've seen people demon possessed. I've seen people that I've just seen everything from the supernatural, right? And at the end of the day, what the Bible teaches is that there's basically two ways into the supernatural, right? I mean, there is the demonic way, which you see a ton of people playing with, whether that be people trying to do Ouija boards, people trying to do it through astrology, people doing it from law of attraction and manifesting the things that you want. People doing witchcraft. Like this stuff is all happening today, right? You hear about it with Hollywood, these satanic rituals, these whatever, right? These are all just forms of trying to operate one way to the spirit realm, which is, if it's not through the way of Jesus, then it's demonic. There's only two paths. There's either Satan and there's Jesus. And by the way, right, as Christians, we actually have the ability to pray and do supernatural things too. Like I have been a part of helping people get healed. Like I have seen cancer healed in people. All right. Supernatural things. So, I already know they both exist. I've seen them and been a part of it firsthand. So when it comes to things like the law of attraction, I actually think it's real. Okay. So I do believe that when you think about the things you want and all the selfish things, like you mentioned, and then the universe gives it to you, I actually think it's real. I just think it's Satan.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, Satan, the Bible talks about this. Satan will give you your heart's desires. Okay. He will give you what you want. This is literally just read The Secret and then read about what the Bible says, and they go hand in hand. It's like, well, of course, yeah, we'll give you what you want. It's all good. Make it about you. Make it me-centered. Make it selfish. You'll get it. So yeah, I think The Secret is actually very real, and I also think it's very demonic. So that's why I'm not a fan of it. And then The Secret will use different Bible verses and things to justify and say, well, Jesus said, hey, if you pray, you shall receive, seek, and you will find. If you just have enough faith, you could move a mountain. And Jesus talks about these things because they are real, but they're only real if you're going through the right path to get there, which is Jesus. Like those things can all happen through Jesus. And it's, what I would call the front door, the correct door. And then there's also the counterfeit, the back door that still gets, a similar result, but the consequences and the price are not what you want.
I can see that. Yeah, that's a really good clarifying response. I mean, that's really good. I talk a lot about belief and faith, obviously fix your belief systems. And it goes a lot to what you're talking about with excellence. You know, if you experience or you expect excellence, you expect good things to happen. Um, Having faith is really just saying, look, I'm going to give this up to you, and I'm going to have faith that it is in the best interest of my life, of my servitude, my serving others, serving you. And in doing that, that is a version of the law of attraction that will attract things that may seem in the moment really tough or bad. But if you keep the faith, then it doesn't really matter whether it's good or bad, because you're putting the good or bad into that, which is something that people, I think, forget, is that they have control over whether they believe or have whether they think it's good or bad or not. But that was it. No, that was really thought out. Have you been asked that before?
Well, dude, I preach and do these things at these Christian events, and
Yeah,
so
but that's a pretty specific one.
yeah. Well, I just talk about it too, even with there's so many things in life that have demonic root that we just take at face value, right? I mean, like, like I said, we're gonna go off the deep end. It's like, okay, think about Halloween, right? It's just like this normal thing that people do, and it's like, well, we glorify literal demons during Halloween, and all this stuff that is literally demonic, and we think that there's nothing crazy about it. It's like, yeah, it's just
Well, it just
Halloween.
becomes
It's
part of
like
the culture. So you
it's
got,
culture.
if you're a sheep, you just follow the herd, and that's
But
just
you
what
know
you
what else
do.
is part of culture? Everything against the Bible, you
Right.
know?
No, right.
Like it's just yeah, it's normal. Like it's all good. Everyone else does it.
Yeah.
And so
It's the law of
there's so many
familiarity. Whatever you're around long enough is what becomes familiar to you, and then you accept it because it's normal.
yep,
Yeah.
100%.
All right, I want to switch gears for a second because we could be here for 3 hours talking about that. But
Yep.
I do want to talk about this because this is something that entrepreneurs, business owners, people that I've talked to, consulted in my groups, it's come up quite a bit, and it's about the relationship with their spouse and the business side of whether you've had good years, you've had bad years, you've had good business experiences, bad business experiences, and how that overlaps or whether it does or doesn't. I think it's individualized. People need to come to terms with where their spouse is, but it comes through communication with their spouse. But where do you land on that with communicating, with your spouse, and talking to Mindy about different things that the business is going through and communicating with her in that?
Yeah, when everything was always rolling for years, we literally never talked about it. We just kind of adjusted our lifestyle as we made more. And she just kind of followed my lead on that. I'm like, hey, let's go on a nice trip. I think we can go first class and get the, $2,000, $3,000 a night place and, whatever. Right. And so that just kind of became normal. And then when business started getting rocky, when the market shifted, I'm like, hey, we're going to have to like chill out on some of this stuff. We don't really need to do XYZ anymore. Let's cut here and all this stuff. And so, we have those conversations as they go along. One thing I will say is I think we had our probably hardest time a couple of years ago when all this was first starting to go down because I just saw what was happening and I was working harder than ever. And, it's funny because I talk about my schedule all the time. I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I don't work on the weekends and all that stuff. And that was still happening. Like I was still only at the office from 9 to 5, but I was taking more calls at night, trying to put out some fires. And, yeah, I was still there for dinner, but man, I'm on my phone just texting people. And so it's like I'm present, but I'm not. And she was getting really frustrated because, she thought that I was just trying to scale to this next level when in reality I was trying to keep everything together. And so what happened was I just didn't explain to her what was happening. She had no idea that things were so difficult. She thought I was just trying to grow.
Do you think that has part to do a little bit with maybe pride or maybe, well, I'll just correct it and it'll be fine? Or what was the thought process there? Because, and the reason why I ask, I experienced the exact same thing over my 20 years of marriage, multiple times. So I just wonder, where do you think that came from at the time?
Yeah. I don't know that it came from pride. It's just we never talked about it in our entire marriage. I mean, we've been married 11 years now, and um, you know, for the first 8, we were always fine. Like it's like no matter what. And by the way, even when we had no money, I mean, we got married broke. So it was just I always set the tone. I'm like, hey, this is like what we can do and what we can afford, and like it just kept going up as we built more wealth. And so that was the first time. Let's just say we went opposite direction, and it was new for her. It's like, wow, like what, like what's going on here? Why are we doing this? And you know, all this stuff. So, anyways, I don't know that it was pride. It was just new.
Mm.
Um, and now I'm way more transparent learning from that than I used to be. Like this month, January, we've been doing so good. And it's really good to see because the last 2 years, like I said, have been really hard. A lot of people will look at it and be like, dude, you guys killed it the last 2 years. I see you everywhere and this and that. I'm like, bro, you have no idea
Mm-mm.
how hard the last 2 years were. Um, I'm lucky to still be around. And, now January, we're going to we're doing really well. Okay. I'll just leave it at that. And I tell her, I'm like, babe, I'm starting to feel rich again. Like things are going really good. We're not going to go crazy, but man, things are going really good. And, we still got XYZ that we got to take care of, but it's going good. So yeah, we're a lot more transparent today.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's like you started with a pattern, and you don't know the opposite end of that until you experience it a lot of times. But I know, I mean, in my experience, there were times where business wasn't doing very well, or it was going in the wrong direction, and I was like, it'll be fine, it's fine, and I didn't really feel the need or the desire to bring that up because she had enough on her plate with the things we were going through, with kids and building a life. And so for me, it was more of a protection mechanism of, look, I can handle it. I can shoulder it. I'm going to get us through this. It's going to be fine. But then at the end of the day, they always know, like they always know something's up, like something. And, when I was going through my hardest time, it was eventually came out of like, what's going on with you? You're like, did you cheat on me? What's happening? I'm like, no, just this, I have so much burden and weight on me and I really don't have anybody to talk to. She's like, well, that's what I'm here for, is to talk to about this, outside of the business world. And it was really, really great for us. We came out the other side stronger, but there's some good in it, but there was also some, I probably should have just talked about about it in the beginning and been like, hey, there's some hard times right now and I'm going through this stuff. I need some help.
Yep. That's I think most people need to have those conversations with their spouse as they're in this. Um like I said, our relationship was just always in that I was always successful at
Mm.
whatever I did. I just was. And she's used to that. And so it was like really the first time I got punched in the face. And she's like, "Why are you working so hard? Like we already got a great life." And I'm like, you have no idea, friggin'.
Mhm. I
We're
think a
about to
lot of
make
people assume
millions
that
of
though
dollars.
when they see certain people. So my
Yeah.
whole career, I've been a doctor for 18 years, and the moment I became a doctor, it was like, oh well, you must be rich now. I'm like, man, I got more student loan debt and business
You know how
debt.
much it costs to become a doctor?
Like, what are you talking about? I'm like broker than you are.
Yeah.
It reminds me of story that Trump talked about. He was walking down. This was when he was in a really hard time, and he was like $900 million in debt or something.
Yep.
Um, and there was a homeless guy, and whoever was with him was like, "Oh, isn't that sad?" He goes, "The sad part is that person is $900 million richer than I am right now."
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the resilient personality. Was he wasn't like, woe is me. It was just like, I can work out of this and I'll figure it out and I'll make it happen.
Yep.
It's a great story. I love that one.
Yep.
I would have loved to have been there to hear that.
Yep.
900 million. What? Let's talk about like personal sacrifices. So what's something you gave up or sacrificed to become successful that most people don't know about?
What did I give up? I mean, I gave up baseball. That was my life. But I think something more
I think I remember you talking about that though. There was a story of you giving up baseball, and the reason why was like Trout was doing some stuff out in center field that you were like, "Ugh, I can't
This is going to
compete.
be really hard to compete with
I
this guy.
can't compete with that. Dang, you know."
Yeah, yeah. You see some people in baseball, well, all pro sports, right? This is what I always say: business, anybody can compete and win, right? I mean, it's off of like your physical ability is not going to dictate how well you do in business. Business is essentially like your mind for the most part. And we can all learn, we can all learn how to do business better. And you don't have to have a crazy high IQ, right? I mean, I'm sure it would help, but it actually probably hurt. Honestly, really high IQ people I see don't become good entrepreneurs because the math doesn't make sense. Why would I do this? Like, it's better to just go this route. So I love business in that it's a very equal playing field. Sports is not. If I'm not born 6'6" and blazing speed and strength, it's gonna be really hard to compete against that guy. Um, Real estate investing, like whatever, dude. You're 6'6". It does not matter. You're this, you're that. It does not matter. We can all compete.
It kind of gives you a good baseline though when you're competing in sports, especially professional sports, to get out and compete in the real world, if you will. I really think it gives you that drive, that hunger, or at least the baseline of what it's going to take. Because from what I've noticed, the average individual in America right now just really doesn't have that drive, that extra mile. David Goggins talks about that. He's like, it's really easy to be successful in today's society or stand out because all you have to do is a little bit extra than everybody else, and what everybody else is doing isn't that much.
Yep.
And I truly believe that. What do you think about that? What's your viewpoint?
On just anyone can do it, or
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I
like
mean,
the average individual now and what it takes to be successful comparatively.
look, everybody's got access to the same resources today. I mean, everybody's got a phone. I was reading a stat the other day. It was like, I think it was like 4 billion people have a phone. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like almost everyone has access to the internet and social media and chat GPT and the ability to go learn. Like everyone's got access to the same stuff. That used to never be the play or the thing. And man, somebody was telling me this because we started doing a ministry here at the office. So Brian, one of my partners, has started doing this homeless outreach ministry. And basically on Saturdays, almost every Saturday, they go out and they feed the homeless. And they were telling me about it. Like one guy had 2 phones, but basically all the homeless people have phones. And I'm like, dang, that's crazy. They all just like, how do they get a phone? And it's like, no, they find a way. I mean, it's important to them. I'm like, okay, okay, here's the thing. Everybody's got access to the same information, the same resources. It's just how do you use it? I mean,
That's a
there's kind
really
of no excuse at this point.
I agree with you. That's in my book, I talk about excuses versus reasons. Like, is it a reason or is it an excuse? Because most people call them reasons. Well, the reason I can't, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually an excuse. You're making that up. Something I did for years and didn't realize it until I started paying attention to it. But it's a really good point that you said, like, oh, they find a way. If it's important enough to them, they'll find a way. And I think that you're really hitting on a great point there. If it's important enough to you, you'll find a way. You'll figure out a way to support your family. You'll figure out a way to make that business run. You'll figure it out if it's important enough to you. You just have to really know and draw a line in the sand of what is important enough to you, I think. And
Yep.
I don't think a lot of people know what that is.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's why it comes back to mindset, right? Because if the information's freely available, it just goes back to, all right, well, cool. Now what?
Mm.
So why do I want to do this? What do I, why am I doing this? What's the goal? How do I go about doing it? I actually think the number one thing I have realized that separates successful people from non-successful people is the simple ability to prioritize. And what I mean by that is every single person right now, today, has a list of 10 different problems, probably a list of 100 if you really counted all of them. And so, you look at this massive list and you're like, where do I start? You get overwhelmed immediately. Whereas successful people look at the list and they can easily tell, hey, this one right here is the one that I got to do right now. This is the most important. This is the bottleneck. This is what's going to make the most impact. Let's do this one first. And until this one's solved, I'm not going to worry about the other ones. And they just start knocking off problem after problem, task after task. And then guess what? They've completed all their tasks. And then they go to the next day. And you know what? There's a whole new list of problems that got to get solved, right? More complaints, more this, more that, more problem. And you just got to keep doing that every single day. And so, right? It's like,
And then the problems actually get bigger, but you are able to solve them better because you've worked that muscle. Elon Musk actually talked about that. It was one of his business partners, and he said, Elon Musk has multiple different businesses that are doing billions of dollars. And he said, what Elon Musk does is he comes in and he says, let's identify the top 10 biggest problems the company has. And he figures out which one is the most important, and he knocks that one off, like you just said, literally. That's what he does. He just flies in, has a meeting. What's the 10 biggest problems?
Just figures out what we got to solve,
Right.
worries about the rest later. And most people don't do that. They try to solve everything at once, or they get overwhelmed, or they're working on the wrong problem. They're like, oh, well, I'll solve this one because that one's easy. It's like, no, that one doesn't even matter. It's not even a problem. So it goes back to the girl that was, just had closed her first deal in 2 years, door knocking and all this stuff. And I'm like, no. Your problem isn't how to split this. You got way bigger problems than this. You need to solve this. And, I think that's just really the only difference between successful people and those who aren't, or people who are hyper successful. They just know how to prioritize.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to the vision too. If you know where your North Star is, if you know where your end result is, Dan Martell talks about that a lot. If you know where your North Star is, it becomes really, really easy to say, well, what are the tactics and the strategies I need to put in place in order to move in that direction? And if something comes into that, that's like, hey, we have a request for your time, attention, money, resources, whatever, and it doesn't align with that North Star, you're like, no. And that's, I think having that vision is so important. And it takes a long time for some people to figure that out by screwing things up and bouncing around. And then some people know it really quickly right off the bat. I think you were very fortunate in the fact that I think had that natural ability when you started flipping couches, and then you realized I need to put this online. And then all of a sudden it took off online. And then that turned into, well, if I can flip houses, I can flip real estate. And then that turned, like you just kept doing that. Like, well, how can we make it even bigger? And how can we make it better? And how can we solve more people's problems? I'm getting attention. How can we help those people solve their problems? And, lo and behold, now you've got a really good organization with a lot of different programs. So it's fantastic. All right. I wanted to ask you one more thing about business. And you mentioned on it shortly, but really about the importance of the person that's driving the business, whether it's the owner, the CEO, depending on how big the business is, and the correlation between their workout habits or health, really the discipline side of their health and the correlation of their business. Have you noticed a trend in that? You went on and started working out a lot more, gained a lot of muscle, more flexibility, so you could outdrive me by 30 yards. I appreciate you doing that, by the way. It got me motivated.
30, come on, man. Come on. Don't be undercutting me.
So talk to me about the correlation between those two things and how correlated they really are, in your opinion.
I think they're heavily correlated. I mean, look, all things being equal, right? If you look at what makes people successful, I mean, there's 4 areas of life that I consider you got to work at, right? I mean, you got to work at business and making money. You got to work at your health. You got to work at all your relationships, and you got to work on your faith. I mean, to me, they're all work. They require you to actually put time, effort, and attention into making them successful. So, I mean, if you look at anybody being equal, right? If you said, man, Ryan and this guy have the same business acumen and work ethic, what's going to separate them? Well, if I'm in better shape than that guy, then I'm going to outbeat him. Like, I'm just going to do things better than him, just because I'll have higher stamina. The hours I do work will be more productive because I can focus longer. It just is what it is. Same thing is true with relationships. It's like, dude, if somebody's got a tough marriage right now and they're at the office and I'm at the office and my marriage is great, guess what? I got a clear head. I'm happy. I'm going at it. And they're just, they got this thing in their subconscious. So, all of it matters, not just health. But, I will say, as far as what I have noticed, yeah, I mean, most of the successful people I know are in great shape. They really are.
I think it
And they
does a
take their
lot
health really
to.
seriously.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's this shift happening, especially in men. Like we've been told, like the generation before me was told basically, when you get into your 40s and 50s, you're like on the downslope. You're on the towards the end of your life. You're gearing up for retirement. And what I've noticed is there's all of a sudden over the last probably 5 to 10 years, but mostly 5 that I've noticed, is that there's this resurgence of these middle 40-year-old to 55-year-old dudes that are jacked, that are are very successful, are living a better life than most people would think a middle 40 to middle 50-year-old would be able to do. And I think it's because there's this misconception that shifted from, it's the end of your life to now it's like, no, these are my best years, and I'm going to be in better shape, and I'm going to have a better relationship, and I'm going to be able to travel more, and I'm going to have the financial awareness to be able to do these things at that time, as opposed to the idea of before of work in a factory or work in a job until you're 65 and then retire, and then you can travel, which is considered the golden years. What I've seen in my practices, by the way, is that you want to travel when you're younger if you can, and you want to figure out a way to make the money when you're younger so you can experience life, because those guys at 65, 75 years old are not enjoying their travel like they had hoped. So anyway, have you seen that resurgence, that that shift? And in that, I've noticed a lot of very successful, healthy, really jacked mid 40 to 50 something year old dudes nowadays.
Well, I think part of the resurgence is testosterone and peptides. So I think that it wasn't this big thing, until recently, really. I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, hormone therapy's probably gotten really popular in the last 5 to 10 years, I would guess.
It absolutely has, yeah.
Um, so I think that that's a huge resurgence. And honestly, too, I think there's a placebo effect with it. I mean, obviously it works, but I think that when you commit to doing that, you're like, okay,
Now I got to work
now
out.
I'll eat healthy. Now I'll work out because, I got this thing. So I think it's a combination of all that. I also think, you know, um, people are just starting to understand like the value of being healthy, right? I mean, people are seeing there is an ROI to being healthy, especially for your business. Like it's absolutely an ROI. It can help you work harder. It can help you sell more. It can help you feel better about yourself, confidence. Everything about it's great. So I think just there's a lot of factors in why it's happening.
I think that sets a tone as well for the rest of the company. Hey, guys, if we're all in shape and we're all improving personally, professionally, financially, then we're all going to win. And then we're going to attract the best individuals to our company that will help it grow faster, which helps you win. And it's just setting this precedence. But I agree with you. There's definitely a lot more options and information that you can get access to now than there was, 20 years ago. And I think the idea was at that time was, oh, you're in your mid to late 40s, and all of a sudden, your life's kind of on the tail end. And now I'm seeing that no, I'm in my prime, in my early 40s. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. I'm working on that right now in order to, have my best years be my early 40s to mid to late 60s. I mean, look, like you said, you were hanging out with Grant. Look at Grant; he's in great shape.
Right.
There's been a lot in the news about Grant and Gary, but Gary is in great shape as well, and he's in his 50s. So I think it's all a matter of what you expect and what you're willing to accept for your life. If you are not willing to accept being overweight or that this is the end of your life, I think it shifts your physiology based on the mindset that you have. Then you're going to take the actions that you actually should do to get the results of being healthy. That's kind of the way I look at it.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
All right, man. Well, any other final thoughts that you'd like to add to anybody? Any major things you're working on, or things that you'd like to say that will make an impact?
Um, yeah, I mean, look, for me, I talked about faith a lot. Faith to me is the most important thing at this point. And I mean, faith has always been a part of my life. I grew up in the church, but it's just become more apparent over these years, especially as you go through hard times and you achieve success. I mean, like for me, even with all the success, I can't tell you I'm any happier because I have influence or that, we made more money or you get more assets or whatever the case is. Like it really doesn't make you happy. Like it's great. Don't get me wrong. I'd rather have a nice house than not. Okay. And money allows you to do so many things. It allows you to give and be generous and all of that. But, you start to just realize that eternity is a lot longer than life here on earth. I don't care how healthy you are. You're probably living till 100 max. Okay. Eternity is forever. They're not even fathomable of what they are. And so I spend a lot of my time, especially coaching, talking about, man, how do we increase revenue this year? How do we grow the business? How do we, position ourselves to sell the company in 5 years? How do we build our brand? And it's like, yeah, all these things we should focus on these things. But when you really think about it, they're not that big of a deal. Like they all go away here very soon. And if we didn't know what we believed during this whole time and we're leaving eternity up to chance, I actually think that that's terrible planning. If we're really concerned about retirement, which so many people are, it's like, man, how do I have enough money for retirement? How do I build up this nest egg? How do I do this? It's like, well, dude, retirement is like 20 years of your life max, right? What about eternal retirement? Do you know where you're going? Because if you don't you think that's a little more important to worry about than the 20 years that your life's old and decrepit? Like it doesn't make sense. So I would encourage everybody to really start thinking about eternity and your faith, because it just, people talk about it, but they never really think about it. It's like, yeah, dude. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. Faith. Like it's all good. Yeah. Yeah. We want to grow. And I'm like, no. You don't get it. Like this is the retirement plan. You're going to be there forever. So if you're like leaving it up to chance where you're like, well, I think I'm a good person, that's stupid. Would you ever run your business like that way? Well, I think I'll get customers because, people like my thing, I think. I don't know. Like you would never run a business like that. I think like you would never do anything like that successfully. So why would you leave your eternity up to chance? So that would be my big encouragement to people is like, yo, Jesus is the way. I've already done all the research for you. I've already experienced all the things for you. I'm just telling you that's the way. But if you don't believe, do your research and spend a lot of time thinking about that retirement.
Wow. What a great way to end this episode, man. I really appreciate you being here and sharing, your guidance, your wisdom, and really opening up as well about your life. I know a lot of times people have this guarded wall up, but I love having you on here because you're very transparent. That's the way I am. I lay it out there. If I can help somebody with my story, I'd love to do that, and I'm excited about it. So thanks for sharing. Really appreciate you. And obviously, everybody, all the links to Ryan's information is down below in the comments, in the description. All you have to do is click on those links. And want to just thank you for tuning into this episode of Fix Your BS, where BS stands for Belief Systems. Hope you've gained valuable insight and inspiration to challenge your own belief systems. If you're ready to take the next step and join the Fix Your BS community dedicated to your personal transformation, check out my coaching group below by clicking the link in the description. We will work together to build your dream life. Remember, the only thing standing between you and your goals and are your beliefs and your actions. So let's fix them. Until next time, keep believing in yourself. And as always, I'm here to help you fix your BS.